Hi, it's Mike Stevenson here. Welcome to this video where we're going to take a second look at the Logic App unit testing framework that Microsoft have just released. So in the part 2 video, we're going to look at the other flavor of testing where we can use the run history to generate a unit test. So there is a previous video, part 1, where we looked at how we can generate a test from the Logic App definition itself. But let's jump in and take a look at this. So we're back over in the documentation here, and in the first video we did, we looked at this top article here, but this time we're going to look at the second article about unit testing from the run history. So we have a quick scroll through the article and see if there's anything that really jumps out here. So what I'm also going to do in this video, I'm going to try and keep it a bit shorter and not duplicate any of the stuff we talked about previously. So if we have a quick look through here, so it's really just background and then prerequisites. So we talked previously about some of these some of the limitations and prereqs. So I'm going to use the same solution I used in the first video. So this link here has this article where it'll help you set up a brand new Hello World project if you've not got one ready to use. The limitations are exactly the same for this approach as we had previously. So what we need to do this time then is, if we look here, we're going to create a unit test from a run of the workflow. So we need to have a run that's executed first. So I'm going to go over to my VS Code solution now, and so we have my Logic App up here, so I'm going to open the designer and just make sure this opens up okay before we start and everything's healthy, which is great. And I'm also going to view the overview, so that should hopefully spin up the runtime. I think I might actually need to F5 and start the runtime as well. There we go, so you can see the runtime's up and running here. I'm just going to shut that down for a minute and we'll open that back up. So you can see we've got the runtime's up and running here. We've got my URL, and I should be able to go and put that URL in the browser over here like we did in the first video, and we can see my Logic App crafts a little message, makes a call out to Google, and just returns the HTML there for us to use. So I should be able to go into the overview now, and then I can see all of the runs that we've got. So I think in the article it was telling me to open up this run here. Okay, and we can see the steps that it went through, and that was all good. So we jump back to the article. So open the workflow, open the run history. So we're really looking for this little button up here which shows us the run history, and then I think we basically just click it from the looks of it. So let's give that a go. Right, so there's our button on our run history. I think if you notice, my Logic App's slightly different to the one in the documentations. They're using a service bus triggered one, whereas I'm just using HTTP. So I think their scenario is possibly a little bit better. Maybe I'll do that as a second example at some future point, because I think that idea of being able to trigger it from a third-party service, not just that passive HTTP call, is quite a good scenario. That's hard to unit test. So let's generate a test here. So we'll give my test a name. So we'll call it test from history. So this is generating a test now. So we've got the little command down here telling us it's doing some stuff. And I'm going to make an assumption it's going to go into this project here. Okay, so that's interesting that... So one of the things that's interesting here is, if you notice, in the test project over here, this is the original test that it ran, that I created in the first video. So we've got some mock outputs here, and then that was the folder that we created the first time, but then the new folder it's created is here. So kind of like I'm guessing this might be a scenario where we've got multiple tests for this workflow. In this case, I've generated the tests in two different ways, but we could also have tests generated from different runs. So if we had, one run went, through a branch to a third-party system, and then it had a condition, and we went left, and then we have another run that goes right. If we want to test both of those scenarios, I'm assuming that's what this would support here. So I think what we'll do, I'm going to have a quick look at this, and I'll maybe run these side by side just to make sure these all work okay still. And then I think what we might do is actually just do it from scratch and have a look what a one fresh looks like. So we've got our test from run history class here, and we can see if we go through, it's really similar to before. So we set up the test executor. We've got the prepare act assert pattern here. So we've got some mock data here. So I'm going to guess we can put properties in here. I think I might just uncomment that to have a look at for an example. Run successful. Then I think this is just a second example, a bit like what we had the last time. So we should really have two, well, the third example here actually. So that one, I think these are just the test run had one fairly simple scenario. So I think these are more just the frameworks producing examples to show how you would do different stuff. So I'm guessing in my case, I'd probably take this one out, and because it's a really simple logic, I'd probably just have one actual test for each one. Now let's have a quick look at this mock here. So this mock.json's been generated from the run history. So you can see here we've got all the details of the so that's the trigger itself. And the mocked actions, we can see it's taken the values out the run history here. So you can see what it actually returns. So I think that looks like the Google HTML there from the looks of it. So a quick look if there's anything else. Yeah, so let's have a quick look over here a minute. Dynamic mock data. So this is where I'd probably inject my own custom values here, and then I think what we'll do, I'm gonna just comment that back out again because I feel like this one here is probably going to use that mock.json. And right, so in this case, I think what we'll do next is we'll do a compile of this code. So I think we'll just go over to here, just scroll this up a bit. So just build my test project. Right, and then if we go over here, you can see actually, so I didn't need to restart anything this time, which is really good. So we've got the original tests from video 1 and the new tests from video 2. So I'm gonna basically just run them all here and just see what happens. So that's really cool. They all ran first time there. So I think they're kind of probably designed to just simulate a really simple test that works perfectly. So that's good. So we can start building them out from here. I think one of the things I am interested to try out, actually, even though this is running in the Mockn framework, I'll be interested to know if we actually get run histories generated for these or not. So I'm going to assume no. Yeah, so I don't think we do get run histories from them because that'll be a run from when I ran it in the browser earlier, I think. Okay, so let's now go back, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this test example folder because I want to have a look what this one looks like if it's completely fresh. So we'll go into this here and we'll do the create from unit test again. Right, so we saw over here we've got a folder that's been created for the so we've got a folder that's been created for the workflow. So if you notice the map into that folder up here, and then we've got my test from run history. So that's the scenario there. And then we've got the mock.json and the run history. So I feel like what would be quite cool is if I had another run. So let's say this failed run here. Right, if we do create from unit tests. Now what I'd expect, if you notice back over in the design here, so we've got two folders now, one from the first run that was successful and one from the failed run over there. Now, I think what'll be interesting, that failed run, the reason it failed was because I've misconfigured the action. So I'm thinking that test probably is going to fail now. So what we'd see here, so we're doing the mock action here, and I think that if you notice the status codes, this returns a status code 301, and here we're going to run this test. So I think this test is testing the logic app succeeds, so the logic app should fail, I think, in this case. So these generated tests, I think, may not be correct now. And yeah, so I think they're all expecting failure. So at this point, I'm going to just run this and see what tests actually do what here. So I'm going to just compile my code again. If we go back to the test designer, so we'll just refresh this. Right, so you can see we've got 3 tests for each, and we'll just run these and see what happens. Now, what I'm thinking here is because the workflow itself, when we originally got the error, it was a URL that was incorrect, Google, that gave us the 301. So I fixed that and ran it again. But the mock data we're going to return, so although the workflow definition's been fixed now, so in theory if I ran it I wouldn't get the error I got before, but because we're mocking the data coming back, the response from Google mocked is going to be a 301 still, which should make the logic app fail. So this is where I think here, so if we see this one actually got a test failure, and I think it's because we're doing an assertion that the run should have been successful. So we'll have a right. So that's interesting. So I feel like that means here this might be kind of a gap in the framework. I feel like we may need to put an error message here. We'll just straight run that again, I think. Interesting. Okay, so let's make. I'm going to have a bit of a guess here, but okay, so I'm going to see if I can figure out what the response should be from that. Okay, so I had to take a couple of minutes just to work on that issue there. So the reason this test's failing is because we're returning this error, or we're getting this error here. The mock that was generated wasn't quite right. So here, what I've basically done is this was looking like a bit like this one here, where we've got the outputs and the status code, etc. So what I've had to do is I've changed it to be error rather than outputs, and then so there was a couple of ones I was getting here. So one I added the error field originally, so it looked a bit like, actually it looked very much like this one here. So if we see, we've got outputs, and then further down we've got error, I think, which is null, or there was error null down there. But I think what I had to do is take the outputs out, just have the error, and then we needed a code, a message, the status code, and the body, I think, or looked like what we needed. So now when I run this, so I now get this error here. So this should still fail again, which is good. So now we've got rid of that nasty error message which was complaining about the deserialization of my mock. So we're now really just at the point where the workflow executed fine, and we need to validate the results. So really what's wrong here is this should say failed, not successful. So if I just go and build my code again. Right, so we should hopefully see this failing test go back to successful now. Yeah, perfect. So you can see that one failed here. So I'm going to rerun the rest of these tests now we've changed that mock. So the interesting bit then, so that's the kind of the first test, sample one, which actually used the mock JSON data. I think here what we're doing is, because we're dynamically injecting the mock values in, so the problem is we're not actually causing the error anymore. So these ones, if I change this to say failed, which is what we expect this test case to produce. Right, so okay, so I think this one's quite interesting. So you see here, this one's actually testing for a failure already. So this is really good, where this is actually passing in the mock for the Google object here. It's passing in the mock. So if I change that to be, I think it was bad request at the minute, so I might make it not found or something like that. I'll just put that a bad request again. So you can see here, we're not actually using the mock.json, we're just simulating, and that code and the message is really the equivalent of what's coming from here and here. So that test, I think, is already testing that it failed, and then the one above, I think it's testing that it failed too, but it's doing it, I think after that change that, maybe, I can't remember now. So this here, I think this should fail now, because this dynamic mock that we're returning is not going to be configured right. So if we, I think that dynamic down here is the same thing. So let's, I think if we just build that again, then if we run, so I think if we run all these tests, I think one of these should fail, and the other two should be good. Yep, so that's what I expected. So this middle one's failing, because we're now checking for failure, but the mock's not set up correctly. So I think if we go here and we do error something like that, so nice that the IntelliSense picks that up. So I think that's the same as what we're doing further down in the below test. So if we build that again, if we run this test, I think that should work now. Yeah, so we hadn't actually corrected that to the right value there. So we've got the mocks basically doing a returning a failure, returning an error, and then fingers crossed this time. Jackpot. Okay, so I'm going to just run all these tests and make sure they're all still green. So we should have the ones from our successful run should be working fine, and the ones from our failed run should be fine now, because we've checked to make sure they are actually genuinely failing when they should. So I think that's maybe one to watch for when you're doing those negative scenarios. Just double check the test code, and I think actually in reality you'd probably get rid of these sample operations that get created. You're probably going to get rid of two out of the three methods and just do it one way. And I think it's really just showing you 2 or 3 ways you could do that. I think I'm kind of if I'm honest, I'm a bit up in the air about which I prefer. I think this approach here is really quite simple, because it's just generating it for you. But I actually quite like this option 2, where I can kind of just encode, override the mock. So I guess for me, I think it maybe sort of boils down to how many different test scenarios they are and which approach would work better for you. But I actually quite like this, but I think we probably need more documentation and samples for the different mock actions to show how that would really work. And I'm going to guess the kind of the simple one here is going to be these mocks generated from the run history is probably just going to be very simple to run. So maybe just trial this out a little bit and see which works best for you. So hopefully this video, I intended this one to actually be shorter, but it looks like it's just about the same length because we had some interesting scenarios around the failed tests there. So hopefully you find this video useful and people can start playing around with this and being productive quite quickly. Thank you for listening to today's video.